So let's read our text. 1 Samuel chapter 1, we'll read from verse 8 to 28. 1 Samuel chapter 1, we'll read from verse 8 to 28. When we began this series on giving, and we decided to do a series on giving because we're raising funds, and it is very easy to think it's just all about money and about building, but before you can give to God, your person, your heart is really the first thing that God requires, not just money. Because I can tell you there was a man who was very rich, who had resources, and he came to the man of God with great wealth. And his name was Naaman. And the stuff that he brought to give was not acceptable to God, and it was not received of God or received by God. So let's not get into thinking, oh, I give money to God or anything like that, and I can pat myself on the back. No, it is my heart, it is my life that God actually asks for first. So then Elkanah, her husband, said to her, that is Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? So Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the tabernacle of the Lord. And when she was in bitterness of soul, she prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Then she made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant, and remember me, and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head. And it happened, as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli watched her mouth. Now Hannah spoke in her heart, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. So Eli said to her, how long will you be drunk? Put your wine away from you. But Hannah answered and said, no, my Lord, I'm a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor intoxicating drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Do not consider your maidservant a wicked woman, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief I have spoken until now. Then Eli answered and said, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition, which you have asked of him. And she said, let your maidservant find favor in your sight. So the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. Then they arose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. So it came to pass in the process of time that Hannah conceived and bore a son, and called his name Samuel, because I have asked for him from the Lord. Now the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer to the Lord the yearly sacrifice and his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, not until the child is weaned, then I will take him, that he may appear before the Lord and remain there forever. So Elkanah, her husband, said to her, do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him. Only let the Lord establish his word. Then the woman stayed and nursed her son until she had weaned him. Now when she had weaned him, she took him up with her, with 3 bulls, 1 ephah of flour, and a skin of wine. and brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and the child was young. Then they slaughtered a bull and brought the child to Eli. And she said, "Oh, my Lord, as your soul lives, my Lord, I'm the woman who stood by you here praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition which I asked of him. Therefore, I also have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he shall be lent to the Lord." So they worshipped the Lord there. We don't give to God as a bribe. We give to him out of love and absolute commitment to him. Giving must be rooted in love. We established that about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And we talked about Abel giving the first fruit of his flock. Now, I say that is an act of faith, because when you go do a business and you make a deal, and the first deal, what comes from that deal, you say, "It is not mine, I give to God." You are acting in faith that many more deals will come hereafter that I'll be able to live by. I tell you, the carnal man, you go do something, the first fruit you get from it, you want to keep to yourself, because I don't know what will happen to the rest, or if there will be any other thing. And we said God does not appreciate being given scraps. We must move from the mentality of feeling self-righteous and realizing that there is actually nothing we give that we have not received. There is nothing that we give that we have not received. As we continue to talk about giving, we want to look at example of a few lives, and we'll start with Hannah, that gave to God, or that gave to the purpose of God, and see how we can be challenged in the things that we do. One, we cannot give to impress God. And Anna's challenge to us is the fact that she had waited, she had prayed, she had been in sorrow, she had been in anguish because she lacked something. Now, she prayed to God and she said, "That which I lack, if you give it to me, actually what I am going to do is I will give it back to you, and I return then to a state of lack." That is her challenge to us. Because he said, "Lord, if you will give me, all I will do with the son that you give me is I will give him back to you. Then I go back home." So 1 Samuel chapter 2, she went back home childless. And you can say, "Oh, she had several other children after." Yes, but at the point when she was giving Samuel back to the Lord, she did not know that she will not have to spend another 10, 20 years waiting for another child. In 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11, if you consider her prayer, you find that her prayer was really to glorify God. It says, "If you will not forget me, if you will give me a child, I will not hold on to that child as my own. I'm going to give up that child for your purpose. And I will go back to the state that I am in now as I am praying to you. How many times do we in prayer just seek our own purpose? And once we receive, we hold on to it. Hannah says, that which I will receive, Lord, I return to you. She made a vow that, God, before you answer, you may, you may not, but if you answer in the way that I want, I'm going to come back to the state that I am in at this time. So it is no longer about me, it is, Lord, all about you. You know, Jesus said, whatever you ask in my name, John 14:13, that I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. I think in Bible study, we talked about this. We spent, I think, about 2 weeks. If we've not, we will, about 2 weeks on this verse. The secret to prayers being answered is a life that ultimately, completely seeks to glorify God. The reason why whatever you ask is answered is not to make you feel good. Yeah, there is a place that says that your joy may be full. Yes, but your joy is full because you see the Father glorified. So when Hannah got her child, she did not do what I tend to like to do. She did not make excuses to keep the child. She did not say, oh, yeah, this doesn't make sense. My competition will keep making fun of me still. She simply went and gave him back to the Lord. You know, when I was thinking about this, someone who had come to just talk to me about a business venture and asking counsel and guidance and prayer and all that. And as we talked, I said, oh yeah, you can look at a situation where 15-year-olds travel overseas for their education and all that. And she said, I will not allow my child. I won't allow my child to do that. That's not. And I thought, when Hannah did what she did, it's not something that many of us will naturally do. So she had money, she could give money. She had bulls and all those things she could give. But she gave a child, I actually know. So when my son was looking to decide what university he will go to, there is someone who went, I want him to go to university in Calgary because I don't want him to be too far from me. You know, but yeah, I won't tell you who it is. I'll leave you to guess. But put in context, how this woman will give up her child. That is contrary to what we will naturally do. It takes a life that is completely sold out to God to give up the best of his or her possession. So, from Hannah, we ask ourselves, have I given the whole of my life to God? In Matthew chapter 19, verses 16 to 25, now behold, one came and said to him, Good teacher, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life? So Jesus said to him, Why do you call me good? No one is good but one, that is God. But if you want to enter into life, keep the commandments. He said to him, Which one? Jesus answered, You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and your mother, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The young man said to him, All these things I've kept from my youth. What do I still lack? Jesus said to him, If you want to be perfect, go sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come, follow me. But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possession. Jesus, in this encounter, tells you and I, or gives us a charge to give up all, to give everything completely. Now you ask, what do I live off? The truth is, the just shall live by his faith. The just lives by his faith, not by his possession. Every time we hold on to possessions, we release faith. Every time we hold on to faith, we let go of our possession. Actually, Jesus said, the lilies of the valley, the lilies in the field, God clothes them. How much more you? The birds in the air, God feeds them. How much more you, that you have much greater value than these things? Jesus said that if you will be perfect, we must give all. Meaning that perfection comes from a lifestyle that gives. So, because a life that gives will not be covetous. Because if the things I'm coveting I cannot hold on to in any case, it makes no sense. And, we said last week, and I want to challenge us. I can tell you there are lots of people who lack food to put on their table in this city. I want to challenge us to support the food bank. Is the mechanism that we have in the city for those people. So giving is not just about church building. No. More importantly, we must begin and learn to give sacrificially. Those people that lack, they might have made bad decisions they might be lazy and all that. That's not what we have to deal with. What we have to deal with is we give. For those who are lazy and come to church, don't worry, I'll talk to them about not being lazy. But those who don't, we don't know what brought them into that situation. Giving brings us to the place where our hearts is focused on heaven and God's kingdom rather than ourselves. Giving brings us to the place where we'll learn to lay our lives on an altar as a sacrifice to God. Because the life of that woman that had the issue of blood was precious to her. She held nothing back. She spent all that she had looking for a way to become healthy. All the money she had. But in the passage we read, this young man turned away sorrowful because he's been told to give up the things he treasured so that he can receive a greater treasure. But he turned away sorrowful because he will hold on to his own treasure. Paul said, the things that were gained to me, I count them but dung, loss, for the excellency of the knowledge of Christ, so that I can apprehend, so that I can enter and experience the fullness of the kingdom of God. Not only when I am dead, but while I am still in this tabernacle. The young man wants to come to God on his own terms, not on God's terms. Friends, we cannot experience the fullness of God's kingdom if we will live our lives and do our things on our terms, not as God requires. In 1 Kings chapter 17, 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 8 to 11. 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 8 to 11. Then God said to Elijah, go and you will meet a widow in Zarephath, and I've commanded her to feed you. And she got there, she saw the widow, and she said, hey, woman, come bring me food. And while you're at it, bring me water too. Remember that there was drought, so water was a scarce commodity. Maybe food, flour was still available, but water was lacking. So the woman turned and said, you actually found me picking sticks. I want to make fire to cook so that my son and I may have our last meal. But I will still give that to you. This woman who had very little and running out of her provision will give to someone else before really what I will naturally say is, hey, in austerity time, just keep to yourself. Let everyone go and fend for themselves, because if I give to you, I'll run out of. And I quote the parable of the foolish virgins and all that. But God starts to challenge each and every one of us that it is not us, it is not what we've kept that will sustain our lives. It is actually what we give. Jim Elliot said something, and I quote him. He says, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. For that widow, all she had left to do was to eat and die. And she went, okay, since my life, I really can't lose it. This food, if I ate it now, it cannot sustain me forever. She went ahead and gave it. The woman of Shunem, 2 Kings chapter 4, you can read the whole of that verse, shows us that it's not about giving in lack only. She was one who looked at Elisha and said, you know what, I'll provide for this guy as he goes back and forth in his work of ministry. And that she simply did. We learned from her that we don't need to wait till Christmas or birthdays or things like that before we think to give. We must learn to identify the needs of our friends, of our neighbors, of people around us, and truly be a blessing to them. Discussion about giving goes way beyond fundraising, because fundraising is something that we've set for ourselves that we will do. However, if we will truly follow Jesus Christ, he sought out the lost. He sought out those who could not give back to him in return, and he gave to them. You know, the Shunammite woman, when he started to give to support Elisha, and Elisha said, oh, what can we do to this woman and all that? And they called her. You know, she said, sorry, I don't have any need. Yeah, she didn't have a child, but that wasn't a request. That wasn't the purpose of her giving. She said, I don't have any need. If I live among my people, I'm well connected, I'm well networked, that anything I need, I can have it. But still, she gave, not because she was looking to receive, but just because the Spirit of God guides and directs to give. We find the example of the women in Luke 8, 2-3, Luke 8, 2-3, I'll read that. Says certain women who had been, it was talking about Jesus's movement. If you read from verse 1, it says certain women who had been healed of evil spirit and infirmities. Mary called Magdalene, out of whom had come 7 demons, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, and Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others who provided for him from their substance. You find that these women, and you know, as I was thinking about this, I think about 2 weeks ago, thereabout, I was like, so how come the example is 4 groups of women who gave and 1 man who will decide to turn away from Jesus because he's not willing to give? Is it because men? No, I don't think so. But really, you find that even in the times of the scriptures, men generally tended to be the breadwinner, but we find in this example, in these examples, that these people, in the weakness, the ones that you will not naturally look to do, they were the ones that yielded their lives to do that which God requires of us. So, friends, it is not the ability that you have. It is you and I looking to God to give us grace, because the one who has ability in his own power will withhold everything and to himself. But the one who receives mercy and grace from God is able to lay his life as a sacrifice and have God glorified through him. So the prayer we are charged to pray this morning is, God, help me, give me the grace that my life may be an offering to you. Because I tell you this truth, as bad as it may sound, every Christian will either leave his treasure or go to his treasure. As bad as it sounds, because we will all die. And when I die, if my treasure is on earth, then I leave it. If my treasure is in heaven, I go to my treasure. So I need to pray to God, give me the grace that my life may be an offering, so that I will be that Christian who goes to his treasure. Because when Paul said, hey, when we stand before the judgment seat, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, it's because many will realize that they left their treasure behind, and it's a great loss. So I want us to bow down our heads, and I want us to talk to God. I want you to talk to God.